Hey guys, so just for the hell of it, I've decided to do a video on my ranking of the Star Wars films. Just the 9 movies the way George Lucas intended them. Kind of. Number 9, last place is The Last Jedi. I actually gave this a mostly favorable review, first episode of season 3, and I am very embarrassed about that. This movie sucked. I hated this movie so much. Admiral Holdo is just such a self-righteous, Kathleen Kennedy branded character. All she had to do was tell Poe that, yes, there is a plan in place. We're not just flying aimlessly to our deaths. It was so stupid. The casino scene didn't go anywhere. Rey is just the all-powerful, perfect Mary Sue character who truthfully does nothing wrong. And because of that, her character is two-dimensional and boring. I can't stand The Last Jedi. It's hands down the worst Star Wars movie ever made. Coming in at number 8 is The Rise of Skywalker. Objectively speaking, this might even be worse than The Last Jedi because it's just choppy. It's like not even good as a film. We have this plot device. Now we have to get to the next plot device so that the plot can happen, not to steal from the critical drinker. Rey is still the boring Mary Sue character. They totally threw the whole Snoke thing out the window in favor of Emperor Palpatine, which I think was stupid. They should have brought Snoke back. Why should they have brought Snoke back? Because he's Darth Plagueis the Wise, and he can influence the midichlorians to create life. And I've said this before on other videos. How would you go up against such a foe? Simple. You got to recruit a bunch of Force ghosts so that you could fight him in the Netherrealm and on screen. It would have been an epic ending. He would have given the bird to Rian Johnson for being such an arrogant bastard, and they could have ended it that way. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. All right, coming in at number 7 is Attack of the Clones. The special effects are already dated in this film. It is some of the worst, most soap opera-esque, mushy dialogue I have ever heard. The acting is atrocious, but to be fair, I cannot think of any actor of any caliber that could make some of those lines work. It's mushy, it drags ass, and it just feels like such a crucible to get to the end when all the action happens. That being said, story-wise, it's not that bad. Coming in at number 6 is The Phantom Menace. This is widely regarded as one of the, if not the worst. In my opinion, it is not. I'm not saying that it's good. It's insanely cartoonish. There's nothing that I could say about Jar Jar Binks that hasn't been said a million times over. A lot of the acting was very wooden, but you got Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, and Liam Neeson could have carried the prequel trilogy by himself. You also had Ewan McGregor, who was the really one consistently good part of the prequel trilogy, in my opinion. You had the pod race, which was freaking awesome. Say what you will about the goofy aliens, like doing the announcements and actually partaking in the pod race itself. The pod race was really cool. And Darth Maul, I mean, come on. That scene with the double-sided lightsaber, freaking awesome. It's a classic. I'm aware of the fact that it's not good, but I can watch it and be entertained. So that's my 6th place. Number 5 is The Force Awakens. I know that a lot of people hate this one because it essentially recycles the entire idea behind A New Hope. I do think that the idea behind the, Star Killer base was kind of dumb. It's like, okay, so they just made a bigger Death Star. There was a lot of shit that wasn't really explained about the New Republic. I blame that more really on the next movies. I thought they were going to kind of delve into that, or into like the Knights of Ren, all that shit. I thought that it was a good launching pad. After the travesty that was most of the prequel trilogy, it really felt kind of like a breath of fresh air. Like, yeah, let's get back into Star Wars. Let's get back into the feeling of Star Wars. I would have been okay with The Force Awakens again as a launching pad if they had gone somewhere interesting with it. I mean, I was interested in Rey's character. I was interested to find out where she came from, what her story was, what obstacles she was going to have to go through. I was interested to find out who Snoke was. I was interested to go into Kylo Ren's backstory. They did introduce some cool new stuff, like him being able to stop the beam from a ray gun, like dead in place. That had never been done before. It's unfortunate because I really do like this one, but it's difficult for me to watch because I just want to see a decent continuation, and there ain't no such thing. Number 4 is A New Hope. Now, I understand that this is the one that started it all, obviously, and I can only imagine what it must have been like in the 70s being in the theater when that Star Destroyer just like comes up over the screen. It must have just been so immersive and awesome. Unfortunately, when I saw it in theaters in 1997, it had already been, I'd already seen it on VHS, so it wasn't that much of a big surprise to me. I really like the fact that George Lucas, much like Spielberg at the time, really tried to base it on the old like serials of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s that they used to watch, like Flash Gordon and stuff. Even like the credit roll at the beginning, like it really kind of captured that and captured it well. The movie really picks up when Uncle Owen gets torched and Luke goes off with Obi-Wan. Up until that point, it does kind of drag a little bit, but it's still, again, it's the one that started it all, and it is in its own right an awesome movie. Coming in at number 3 is Revenge of the Sith. And this is why I do not totally dismiss the prequel trilogy. That and the fact that, again, the prequel trilogy story is actually quite good. This was the first enjoyable Star Wars film since The Return of the Jedi. That being said, the movie's not without its flaws. There is still some pretty bad writing, but not nearly to the degree of Attack of the Clones. And Anakin actually grew a little bit as a character. I mean, yes, he is still an angsty dude. He does inevitably turn against the Jedi, obviously, but his motivations in doing so are sort of understandable. Not everything that he does is understandable, but the road that it takes to get him there is believable. The duel with Yoda at the end and Palpatine in the Senate was just so epic. It ties in perfectly to A New Hope, even with them wiping C-3PO's mind, which was a big concern at the time. It's still questionable, but I mean, for the most part, it did tie in very well to the original trilogy, and I love it. Moving on, in second place, we have Return of the Jedi. This was kind of difficult because Return of the Jedi is actually my favorite one to watch. The pacing is, I think, the best. It's a little slow in Jabba's palace, but like overall, like everything that's going on in the movie is just, it's the final thing, And I mean, I'm sorry, but I kind of still look at it that way. It really brings everything that happens in episode 3 full circle, father and son pitted up against one another. And it's really kind of a beautiful story. The Ewoks were dumb and kind of could have a tendency to take you out of it a little bit. I think that the whole Leia-Luke sister dynamic, that felt like it wasn't planned, honestly, for reasons. Could have kind of done without that, but like the ending to this film when Luke faces off against Vader and Vader saves him from Palpatine, it is just so poignant and it puts such a cap on the series. It's beautiful. I love this movie. And that brings me to my number 1, which is The Empire Strikes Back. I don't enjoy watching The Empire Strikes Back as much as I do Return of the Jedi, but objectively, it's the best movie. Really, the whole thing of Luke going to the Dagobah system and like training under Yoda, it really just broadens the lore and kind of immerses you in this fantasy space opera. You can almost feel the Force yourself, like you're there with them sitting in the swamp, like learning these things. And it's such a well-written, well-directed movie. And even the dark notes that it ends on, what a risk. This film expanded on the lore. It took so many risks. It's the best point that Star Wars has ever gotten to, honestly. So that's my list. I know that it varies with a lot of people, but let me know what you guys think about it, all right? If you're watching this on YouTube, check out my Rumble channel. And if you're watching this on Rumble, please check out my YouTube channel as well. And that's all she wrote.